Your Local Breadman is a semi-underground artist and designer that I'd say is one of the most stylistic artists of the modern time. He consistently puts out some of the coolest clothes, coolest music, and in general, the coolest media on the internet. If I had to liken him to anyone, I'd tell you first that no one really compares, but second, I'd probably say a more serious Sad World. One of my favorite pieces of art made by Breadman is his series Purgaliminal. Similar to Petscop, it's not an actual playable game, but simply a depiction of what his art style and mind would create if there were to be a game. Breadman has in the past stated that he would like to make some kind of playable thing involving this universe, but I do not like putting that out there, as the less pressure on him there is, I feel the better the product will be. Purgaliminal, I'd say, is one of the most complex, most intricate, and most incomprehensible pieces of media in the 21st century, and I think it's about time someone made sense of it. While this is an ongoing series, I plan on covering the whole story up to the present day. Come with me now, into the void. Our first episode is very important as we meet our first recurring character, Klaus. We are shown a map and then given a warning of incoming entity before we are finally able to meet Klaus. Klaus appears to approach the character slowly before we are given our first instance of dialogue in the series. Here is what the dialogue consists of.
Greetings. My name is Klaus. I knew I'd find you here. This void isn't big enough for the two of us, you know. You've been running and running. I've been watching. But just like the march of time itself, one day you'll have to slow down and face me. Until then, I'll be waiting. Oh, and by the way, there's a horde of entities ahead. You might want to be careful.
Initially, he introduces himself before stating he knew he would find us here and that he has been watching us. His statement that we will eventually have to slow down and face him gives the impression of an antagonist. He also states that we have been running, which implies that there is prior history the character has experienced before this point in the story. His following statement that he will both be waiting for and watching us along our journey shows that he'll be a recurring character, and his warning of the entities ahead is of course a warning of the upcoming battle.
You might want to be careful.
This is the end of our first episode in the series. Episode 2 is called Purgaliminal, Concept Gameplay for Surreal Otherworldly RPG. Our second episode picks up with our first instance of gameplay in the whole series. The first menu displays player name, of which there is none, HP, which is already less than full, PP or power points similar to Pokemon, as well as our player's status, which at this point is uneasy. At the forefront of the menu, our player has 3 action options to choose from: Scan, Leave Area, or Shift Dimensions. Our player selects the Scan option, which opens a prompt stating that there is one entity present, but he is not visible in our current dimension. Our player then returns to the initial menu before intuitively selecting the Shift Dimension option, which displays a prompt stating we have shifted 1 dimension down. This makes the current entity visible, and our player decides to speak with it. The entity states, "Oh, to be reborn of pure flesh, what an honor it will be," as if it's an inevitable, before the words hostile appear, labeling the creature, of course, hostile. Our character looks through his items, selecting the 7 of diamonds, which appears to increase crit chance. Our player then decides to attack the enemy with the psychic attack Hyper Wave, critting out the enemy and killing it in 1 blow. Our foe exclaims, "You will see my flesh again, but not in this form, my friend," before fleeing. He also shifts us up 1 dimension. This first encounter is quite important as it gives us our first example not only of actual gameplay, but combat as well. The game obviously takes after old-style RPGs, but has many unique action options, and we were able to see them all get used in that one instance. This is our first non-hostile encounter. The entity warns us of beings that accompany us on our lucid dreams, and to be wary of them before giving us a copy of Your Local Breadman's music. This being a nod, of course, to the creator himself, Your Local Breadman. After shifting one dimension down, the creature we were previously speaking to morphs into a more grotesque version of himself before explaining to us how feeble the human brain is. This is a very interesting quote, as it could mean that us, the player, are human, or that he is just commenting on the fact that humans are a thing in this reality, as well as having an understanding of the existence of mental disorders in humans. He also refers to the place we are in as the void, and insinuates that its presence affects the human brain's mental state passively. By what means we are unsure of. This being our second combat sequence, there are a few key details to note here. First is we didn't have to shift down a dimension in order to initiate combat with this foe, and also during this combat, while looking through our items, it appears that we have way more than previously, indicating that time and events have passed that us, the audience, were not able to witness. Once again, we use Hyper Beam to take out the foe in one hit. If you look at our player stats, not only do we have more health and more power points, our status is now Scrungled, which I am not sure what that means. After our prior battle, the following sequence once again shows us different player stats. This time our health and power points are lower, seemingly trying to show that this is an event that took place prior to our last battle. We are able to view the map once again, although it doesn't give us very much info as usual. This is also the first time we get to see the Observe Action option in the UI, allowing us to see the upcoming entities outside. The player then equips a signal dampening device in order to leave the area undetected. In the following section, you'll be able to see this device work its magic. The text at the bottom translates to "I'm drowning" in Hebrew. This word right here I've been unable to decipher. I've inverted it so it's legible. My two theories are such. Rohrenalk, translated directly into German, translates to pipes, okay. While this is obviously beyond me what it could mean, the dichotomy of the Hebrew language followed by the German language may have some context you can probably guess at yourself. On top of that, prior to the screen, it is talking about the contrast to light and dark. This is a very prominent dichotomy in the Hebrew thinking in the Old Testament. My other theory, seeing as in the following screen we see both of the entities previously showed at the same time, instead of individually, the natural invertedness of the word could hint at this being the name of the location itself. I personally think the latter is more likely, as the Holocaust reference doesn't seem to have any point of ground below it. Also notice in the next screen that our player status has turned to dreaming. I cannot even start to imagine what the implications of this are. In this fight sequence, we see our character use a new psychic attack, Firefly, to hit both enemies at once. However, Entity X, which I'm assuming is the upside down one, as that's the one we spoke to first, hits us with a move Hyper Decay, diminishing our health by more than 1,000,000 HP. In the death screen, we see none else but Klaus himself. This could mean that Klaus is such an important antagonist that he exists in the player's dead existence, or this is just a simple screen that the game would show you to keep the player involved and keep on trying. Regardless, we do not see what the player selects. The third episode, The Outlands, starts off with, of course, a new set of player stats, possibly putting us in between our first non-hostile encounter and how we left off last episode. Nonetheless, this is where we get to see the full scope of exploration capabilities in the Purgaliminal space. Notice our player status. This means in between Scrungled and Smulched, we experienced a status of Decay. It's possible this takes place directly after our previous fight, as the status of Decay could be caused by being hit with the attack Hyper Decay. The text box prior stated that this structure may serve as tonight's shelter. While this is of course a normal thing, it does indicate that our player either needs sleep or has just been in some kind of altercation requiring rest. Again, remember, we have no 100% confirmation that we are indeed human. And our health not being at full, as well as our power points being the most drained we've seen, could indicate some kind of significant combat happening prior to this moment in time. Inside the structure is a parental entity looking for their offspring. Note the vocabulary used, as it may indicate some kind of language barrier being crossed. After shifting dimensions in an unknown direction, we find the culprit of the missing offspring. An entity possibly named Harrow seems to have reveled in the killing of these beings, as it describes it in more detail than you'd expect. Once again, take note of the language used here, as Harrell seems to use the particular word decay, which as I've stated is our player's current status. He says he saved the offspring from this decay, which more than likely is hinting at an upcoming fight against this entity. However, we are unable to see this fight, as the episode abruptly ends here. Our fourth installment is arguably our most important yet. We seem to be back in our early stages of the story, as our max health is very low again. Our status is also plonkered. The entity Ringaroy appears and says something we do not understand, once again showing us the language barrier between beings in this universe. Take note that our player stat power points has turned into MP, which I'm assuming is merit points based on Pokemon again. After scanning the area, we seem to be unintentionally shifted into a dimension with an entity named Hagaroth. It is possible Ringaroy was warning us. Hagaroth references Klaus, saying that he has ordered him to come exterminate the player. He also says, quote, "Klaus told me everything. Now that I'm in the know, I can't stand by and do nothing." This shows Klaus has an actual reason to be targeting us, and Hagaroth is more than likely referring to this something as his reason for attacking. It's quite possible our player is not as innocent as we may think. Suddenly, the player is faced with an entity that refers to themselves as Hegel. This intro is very indicative of the character in general, as there are many unknowns. Did Hegel transport us out of the Haggaroth fight, thus saving us? Does he have some relation with Klaus? Could he possibly have more influence or power than Klaus? His words indicate a goal of integrating us into him. Is that a good thing? As you can possibly tell, this is a very important part of the series, and judging by the name of the episode, Hegel's Intervention, it's safe to say that his presence is more than an introduction. Like the title suggests, it's an intervention.